longer. Now, Well.
We are
Finally.
on, my brother.
Happy
We
June.
are
Happy
on.
June. I am
Listen,
so excited to be with you today.
there's a lot of things going on today, Raj.
Well, congratulations, Dr. Henry. I want our folks to know that Dr. Henry is the sole reason we have a stream today. He's doing an awesome job in pulling it together. And so we thank him for being our production for today. So we're excited about that. Dr. Henry, it's good to see you.
Man, it's good to see you too, Raj. Good to see. Hey, happy Juneteenth, man. Happy
Same to
Juneteenth.
you. Same to you. Oh, my
Yes, sir.
goodness. I tell you, we sure are living in some good times, aren't we?
Yes, definitely. I mean, when you think of where we came from and where we are now, we still got a lot to go now, a lot more things to do. But we praise God for what it is. And so, just this week, they signed it as a national holiday, and
Yes.
we're just praising God for it. Juneteenth. I'll do a show on
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, right?
But you
Hey,
know
we're
what is
missing somebody,
interesting?
Raj.
It has been part of our,
Oh,
for those of us who know the history, it has been part of our history, but we really didn't really capture the significance of it until these last couple of months as it was getting down to the wire. But it is such a joy to be able to be alive and to know that we are part of something major. This Juneteenth is something major.
all right. Well, listen, I also want to just let our people know that we are looking in the chat for your comments, and as you know, I'm running it today, so
Yes.
I'm initiated. They initiated me. Initiation. So
Yeah, we
if
have
you,
we have Valerie in the chat, Valerie Singleton from Atlanta. So glad that you're here. Please put in the chat where you're viewing from. You may be looking for our third host, Pastor Anselm Paul. As you know, this is camp meeting season. And we really don't run ourselves. Last week I was in camp meeting with South Central Conference. This week, Pastor Anselm Paul is with his conference, Southeastern, as they begin their camp meeting, virtual camp meeting time. So he had to be with them this afternoon. So we are going to kind of try and hold it down. No one can do it like Pastor Anselm Paul, but we're going to try and hold it down, and hopefully God will bless us today. I see you, Karita. So good to have you with us. And Roycelyn, we're glad that you're here watching from Maryland. But Dr. Henry, share with us a little bit what happened last week. I missed it. I saw it in the replay, but share with us what happened last week.
well, listen, last week we had a perspective from our members, and we had Dwayne Dortch on with us. We had Dr. Kirk Nooks, and I'm telling you, it was a show. They went all the way in, Pastor Wade. They talked
Mm,
about constituency meetings, and I think the message I heard last week was the membership, they want to get involved, so we need to allow them to get involved in what we're doing. And so we had a
mm.
very engaging show. So praising
Excellent,
God for
excellent.
that.
I truly enjoyed it when I looked at it in the replay. But I'm looking to look at it again because I didn't take notes the first time, but I'm gonna take some notes so that I can share with my administration what the members are saying. And I
Yes.
think we need to do another show like that where we just bring on the members and let them just share what they want to see happen in their church. Isn't that right?
Exactly. I think that's what we need to do. More shows on the membership's perspective, because
Mm.
that's the heart. We want to know what our members are thinking, and we want to be able to partnership with them so that ministry can happen in a powerful way.
Awesome, awesome, excellent, excellent. So listen, please hit the share button, hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We want you to make sure that you do not miss a episode of Pastors Roundtable. We're about to bring it to another level. We began to engage in our group. If you have not joined the group, you need to join the group. We need you to join the Facebook group for Pastors Roundtable. We have some interesting things prepared for you. At the end of the show, we'll tell you about something great that's about to happen. We are excited about that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But Dr. Henry, tell us what is on the table today.
All right, on the table again, we have another Sabbath lunch spread on the table today. And as we are coming out of this pandemic, churches are opening up now, as far as the buildings are opening up, and ministry is different. We said this at the very beginning when we started the Pastors Roundtable, that we have to think differently. Ministry
Mhm.
is different, and so we want to know about the next generation of pastors. We say the next generation of pastors, but even the pastors now, what kind of pastors are needed for this time? That's really at
Mhm.
the table. What kind of pastors are needed for this time so that we can propel the mission forward?
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome, awesome. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I know you probably we would actually have another one of our hosts share who's at the table today. Well, I am just so pleased to have with us today a good friend of mine. He colleague. We served together in the same union. He then became our union youth director, and then he was tapped because of the insight and the way he does ministry. I am so excited to have with us today Pastor Jose Cortes Jr., who is the
Hey,
Associate Director for the North American Division Ministerial Association. Doc, so glad to have you with us today.
man, it's so good to be with you guys, and thank you for the invitation. And I'm looking forward to having an awesome conversation together. Roger, it's really good to see you, man. You look better, brother. I don't know what South Central is doing to you, but you're looking better, man, than when you were out there in the Atlantic Union and then the Mid America Union. You're looking better now, man. South Central is something in the water, the air. What's going on, man? But you're looking good. And Dion hasn't changed since we went to school together. Dion hasn't changed, man. Look at you guys. I'm getting old here, and you guys are getting younger. Have mercy.
Hey, I don't see any gray in your hair, but no, we won't go down that road. We won't go down that road.
Watch it, watch it.
Hey,
Oh man.
Doc Cortez, we are so glad to have you with us. Listen, we did not do you any justice in terms of how we introduced you. We want to give you an opportunity to share something. You can give a shout out. You can whatever you want. We'll give you 40 seconds. Since you are the guest today, 40 seconds to introduce yourself or shout out to someone who is listening, who could be listening. Go right ahead. 40 seconds.
All right, listen, I'm the husband of my wife, Joanne Cortez. She is a pastor. So you know that in our home, we're all in with women in ministry. All right. So she's a
Uh-huh.
pastor and she's also a church planter. So you know that in our home, we're all in church
Okay.
planting. So that makes me a ministerial spouse right now. I've been a pastor all of my life. Now I'm a ministerial spouse. Not only ministerial, but ministerial spouse. My wife is planting a church in Washington, D.C. So
Awesome.
I'm being very supportive. And during the pandemic, I've been able to be home, so I've been very supportive of her. I have two kids, and they are teenagers. I thought I
Mm,
was a great dad till they became teenagers and we hit the pandemic. Okay, I thought I was the best dad ever, and then I realized that I need lots of prayers, everybody, lots of prayers. You know, pastors need prayers too. So
that's right.
that's those are my biggest achievements in life, husband and past and dad.
Father.
And then also North American Division. I enjoy what I do, leading out in evangelism for the Ministerial Association, church planting, global mission, mission to the cities, all of that kind of good stuff. Okay, and most recently we've added the Next Gen Pastor Initiative, which is something that
Mm,
I think we're going to be talking about today. So that's it, man.
yes.
That's it.
Awesome, awesome. Doc, so glad to have you with us. Doc Henry, let's get started. Lead us in prayer, and then we will get started right away.
All right. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's ask God's blessings to be in this place. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much, God, for this tremendous opportunity so that we can talk about ministry, having Pastor Cortez, Lord, with just his experience, his breadth of knowledge, dear God. We thank you for him. We ask God that we'll have an engaging conversation today. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Amen. Amen. Wow. Doc Jose, listen, we have had a lot of conversation over the years as we had ministered together. You were involved in training youth and young adults in preparing them for ministry. One of the initiatives that came out of the Greater New York Conference, where you served as youth director, was these AYM classes, these Adventist Youth Ministries classes, where they could have learned to preach. I know over in the northeastern side where we were, we talked about Young Preachers Institute, and the same thing
Right.
happened there in the Greater New York Conference. But listen, now that I don't want to say ascended, you have been tapped.
No.
Let me put it that way. You've been tapped to serve at the North American Division in the ministerial department, looking at how we foster and resource and recruit pastors. That I think is along the lines of what your department does. I know you have a particular role there, but what critical roles do you expect to see in this new generation of leaders? Prior to the pandemic, everything was hunky-dory. All of a sudden now, we have paused and we have to rethink what kind of generation we want as leaders in this year. What are some of the critical roles are you seeing pastors have to transition, or maybe they're not transitioning to?
Well, I want to say this: the pandemic was very revealing. Because you had churches that went to the next level, and you have churches that descended to the previous level, or perhaps to several levels below what they used to be. And I think a lot of that had to do with leadership, and it had
Mm,
to do with the abilities of the pastor to be flexible. So I think that as we go into new chapter here in North America, a post-pandemic chapter in North America, we're needing pastors that number one um, uh, are flexible,
mm,
okay, and agile. I think probably the agility probably will be the name of the game when it comes to ministry for the years to come. And of course, we need pastors who pray. We need pastors who are spiritual. We need pastors who read their Bibles and who have communion with God. That is kind of a given. So that's
hmm
why I didn't begin with those. But but right now, after we move from the pandemic, I think agility in ministry is one of the greatest things that we need in ministry. People who are able to adapt, people who are able to make changes quick. Because at times, if we don't make a change quick, we may be left behind and we may be eaten by the competition. We're
mm,
not trying to compete. We're trying to win people for the kingdom. But there are lots of other people out there who are trying to win people for the kingdom as well. Am I making myself clear? So
making
so we
yourself
want to
very
make sure
clear.
that all of our local churches are able to thrive. And if our local churches are going to be able to thrive, we're going to have to need leadership that is able to be flexible, to look at the times, to make changes, to adjust in order to be able to do this. And I remember as we began the pandemic, uh, some of us right away went online. Some of us went online right away. You guys went online. I went online. There were thousands of pastors in North America who went online, and I remember one day going through my feed and looking at my colleagues to see what my colleagues were doing all across North America. I like to do that when I have a little time on Sabbath afternoons to go and see what everybody's doing. People who are getting baptized. That's how you see pastors baptizing. That's how you see some great sermons. You get some great quotes, Sabbath afternoon when I have time. And I went on and I saw this pastor. He was, he's a veteran. He's one of our veterans in North America. And I saw him preaching, and he was preaching upside down. Ha! Upside down. Like, he was like, when Peter was crucified with the
Mm.
head down and the feet up, he was just like Peter, man. Just that he was preaching rather than being crucified. So it kind of got my attention. And the following Sabbath, I went back to check on him, and he was preaching upside up. He was no longer
Mm,
preaching upside down. And I said to myself, listen, a lot of guys were laughing at my colleague my veteran because he was preaching upside down like Peter. But guess what? The fact is that he was online, even though perhaps he's past his 70s. He was online. He was trying to do something, and I think that's very important. Trying to do something, and then the next day, next time he preached, he was right. He was preaching upside up. So I asked him. I said, "What happened? What changed?" And he said, "Well, I went to some of the young people from my church, and they told me how to do it. So now I'm going to be doing it right. I'm going to be working together with them." So he took a week to adapt, but he adapted. Okay,
Mm,
and he continued throughout the pandemic. So we need agility. I believe agility is one of the great things that need to happen. Vision. I think vision is a great thing as well. Vision is the ability to see what's going to happen before it happens.
mm,
Okay, so we need visionary pastors. Something else that is really important: we need pastors who are resilient. Okay,
mm,
and that's one of our concerns in the ministerial association. Is one of our concern with younger generations that um, I'm not going to say that the younger generations are not, they don't seem to be as resilient as some of the older generations, but but they don't seem to want to take it. A lot of us have taken a lot of hits and a lot of I'm trying not to say abuse, but yeah, well, some of us have taken some abuse, and from our members and from our leadership sometimes, and we have a difficult time. Why are you guys laughing like that? Can you
Say it.
relate to
Say
what
it's
I'm saying?
abuse. We've been taking abuse, preacher.
Okay, it hasn't been. Listen to me. I would not do any other thing. Okay, I love what I do. I love ministry. Okay, so if you ask me again, what would you want to do? I would want to do ministry with everything, with the good and the bad. The good outweighs the bad, but some of our younger generations don't seem to be willing to take that anymore. Okay,
mm,
so we're needing pastors who are not only agile, who have agility, not only visionary, but resilient. People who are there for the long game. Not trying to get you to come to your church for 2 years and then get tired and then try to go to the next church because the pulpit is a little bit bigger. How about making your pulpit bigger, right where you are? Grow your congregation rather than trying to look for that next job in 2 years from now. So we need people who are able uh, to stay the game, who are able to stay in power, okay, if I could say. So those are some of the things that I think we're needing in the next generations. One very important thing: we need a next generation that is missional. Okay,
Okay.
mm,
um, I see, and I see this in North America with a lot of concern. People talking about discipleship, and in the same breath, they talk against baptisms. Okay,
mm.
and I say to myself, how can you disciple people that haven't been born? In order to
Wow.
disciple somebody, you have to be born. For you to grow up, you have to be born. Baptism is the birth. Discipleship is the maturing time when you get ready, so you are also able to multiply. So uh, for some reason, we've stopped talking about growing. We've stopped talking about multiplying, and at times it seems that maintenance is the name of the game nowadays. So if you're good, you take a church with 50 members, and when you leave, you have 50. You're in good shape. How about leaving that church with 100 rather than with 50? When you leave,
Mm.
how about making appeals on a regular basis? How about planting a church? Once you have a strong church, planting a next church, that your ministry might multiply. So those are some of the things that I think we need in the next generation of pastors in North America.
How about how
That
about
Wow.
was a long,
how
long
about in the
answer.
how about in the area of technology? Do we need pastors that are tech savvy? Is that what we're looking for now? Because we're in a world where, I mean, these tools are helping us to really promote the gospel.
Well, agility has everything to do with that, and that I guess my mention to the older pastor who went online the first week upside down, and then he was right. That I guess that was a reference to technology. Technology is very important, and I praise. The pandemic has been real bad because lots of people have died. Lots of our loved ones have been sick, and many have died. I think we all know someone who has passed away during the pandemic. But if we could say anything about how has the pandemic blessed our church, Prior to the pandemic, I remember we had people criticizing social media, criticizing pastors who spent time with technology. And if it hadn't been for technology, our church wouldn't be where we are today.
Mm.
Okay, uh, we've gone through the pandemic. People have heard the gospel. People have heard the gospel in a very special way, through very interesting means. But the gospel has been shared, even though we couldn't be physically together. We still have been together virtually, and all of that is grateful to pastors who are uh, who are savvy when it comes to technology, and who are not afraid of technology. And I don't think that after this pandemic we're going to have people criticizing Facebook or criticizing YouTube,
That's
or
right.
saying that the social media is of the devil. You know, social media is neutral. Okay, social media does what you do with it. So if you want
Mhm.
it to be good, you got to do some good stuff with it. If you want it to be
Yeah.
bad, you can do some bad stuff with it. If you want it to be irrelevant, don't do anything with it. And social media will be relevant, but you will be irrelevant if you don't do anything with it. Okay, so definitely when I talked about agility and flexibility, that's part of the game. You know, making sure that we are technological savvy. And if we're not willing to invest in becoming technological savvy, we need to surround ourselves with younger generations of members, church members, young people who are able to do it for us. Okay, so and that's it. However, one thing though, I want to make this very clear. As pastors, we are not called to spend all of the entire day in the computer, in technology, in social media. There's got to be a time when we go out there and touch some people for Jesus. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
very important. So now the pandemic, I'm vaccinated. I'm able to go out there and preach again. Okay, I'm able to go out there and give Bible studies again. I'm able to go out there and begin baptizing people again. Now we need to do both. No,
Okay.
it's not
Got you.
time to stay in social media by itself anymore.
I love it. I love it.
So listen, I just want to touch on something. Prior to the pandemic, just before the pandemic, there was this major push or this big announcement that in a couple of years we will actually be short pastors. There's going to be a shortage of pastors. And at first, when I first heard it, I began to say, where that coming from? I mean, how could you be short pastors? I mean, there's so many people that go into school to be a pastor, and some of them don't get the call because there's no church to give to them. How, what exactly is going on with that? Is there really a shortage of pastors?
Let me tell you what's going on. In we've been doing some studies from the North American Division Ministerial Association, and I want to give a shout out to my colleagues Ivan Williams and Dave Gemmell. Um, and we've been looking at the age of pastors in North America. The pastoral force in North America right now is an aging pastoral force. And let me give you a few stats right here, so you have an idea. When we made that announcement uh, at the Camporee, what that was 2019, was it? Uh,
2019,
at the,
yes.
and we rolled out the Next Gen Pastor Initiative for the North American Division. At that time, we had 750 pastors who were already at that moment, at that time, 2019 Camporee, 750 pastors who were already eligible for retirement at that time. Okay,
Hmm.
that
Mm.
doesn't mean that everyone who is eligible for retirement is going to retire, and we have been experiencing uh, pastors who delay their retirement not because they want to continue to work, but in many cases because their finances are not good enough to retire. And I want to do a little parenthesis right here and talk to the younger pastors. Begin planning right now. Right now, begin planning. If you just got out of seminary and you're in your first district, your first church, your first pastorate, begin to plan for your retirement now, because you don't want to get to 65, 66, 67, and don't have a house, don't have funds to retire, and then having to work past your prime, and having to deal with difficulty in ministry simply because you don't have money to retire. So this is a time to start investing in your retirement. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of the pastors are not have not been retiring. But as of today, we have over 1,000 pastors who are eligible for retirement in North America. Okay, um, which and our prediction, our projection is that within the next 10 years, actually 9 years, within the next 9, 10 years, we will have had about 2,500 pastors who will be within the next 10 years that will retire.
Wow.
That is a little bit more than half our pastoral force in North America. If we count administrators, departmental directors, pastors at the local church, in our local churches, we have close to 5,000 pastors in North America. Okay, 2,500 pastors is 50% of our pastoral force. Uh,
Mm.
does that ring a bell? Does that
Mhm.
sound an alarm somehow? And Roger and Dion, I'm gonna say this. Uh, you know, uh, we have pastors out there who are pastoring still at 77 years of age, 78. Perhaps a few in their 80s who are still pastoring full time in North America. But that's hard. And and at some point, if there is no retirement, one day some of these guys are going to start dropping dead.
My
Okay,
Lord.
and that's not a good thing to say. It's not but it's a reality. One of the first things that a leader needs to know is to be able to see reality.
Yes.
Okay, and that is reality. So we need to prepare, because if we're not preparing for this, the time will come when this happens, and we will not have a solution for this problem. So we're anticipating that we're going to be needing somewhere between 150 to 300 pastors per year uh, in the next in the next 10 to 13 years in the North American division. Okay,
Mm.
and let me give you a little bit of what's going on
Uh-huh.
right now. We have around 100 theology majors that graduate in our schools. It goes between 90, 80 something, and 100 that graduate in our schools every year. We don't have a whole lot of theology majors in our schools, and we have about 85 North American division based Master of Divinity graduates on a regular basis, or 85 to 90. Uh, there is more people who graduate, but a lot of the people who graduate in the seminary are not North American division based. They come from other divisions and they go back to other divisions. So, and you got to take into account that not everyone who graduates is able to do ministry. Okay,
Mm.
because at times you have pastors you have students who go for ministry, but they realize that ministry is not their thing. Is that am I making myself clear here? I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being too harsh. Okay, and so not everyone who graduates is able to pastor. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
so I've seen mistakes done in cases in which people have not gotten calls, and they've turned out to be awesome pastors in the future. But at times you don't see that right away. You cannot see it right away, and some of the guys and some of the ladies don't get calls right away. Okay, so another situation that we have right now is that even though we have embraced ministry for women in North America, not all of our churches in North America have embraced that yet. So some conferences, even though they are pro women in ministry, they have a hard time placing a lady in ministry because some churches are not accepting yet. Okay, so we usually have to go with bigger churches where you have a few associates. You get me? So
Mm-hmm.
so those are some of the reasons why we need more people to graduate in order to be able to have more people to pick up in ministry. I have conferences this year that they had 10 retirements in one shot. Okay, so we're beginning to see a wave of retirements
Wow.
in North America. If you live in North America, you have a North American background, because we need people who are able to minister in North America. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
We're wanting younger generations who are able to minister here, and you are passionate for the Lord, and you have the calling of God, and and you're you're engaging yourself in ministry. That's another parenthesis I want to make here. uh, if you're a student going to the university right now, you're doing theology at one of our colleges, or you're in the seminary doing the Master of Divinity, make sure that you get engaged in a local church. Don't just sit in seminary, go to classes, and then go home. Get engaged in a local church. Begin to work under the mentorship of a pastor. Uh, Allow yourself to get in the water and begin to swim, because those are the things that conference presidents look for when they come to interview people. And the first thing they ask before they get to the interview with you, they already asked the professors, they already asked the department, the director, they already said, who are the people who are engaged in ministry? Who are the people who are doing a great job here? So don't think that just because you go to school for 4 years and you graduate, you're going to get a job. You need to make sure that you get engaged, that you're in ministry, so you have that already behind you. So when you get your first call, you know what to do, and you don't have to go learn how to swim at that moment.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Let me just
Awesome.
follow up on that question there. So, you identify some of the things that pastors need to understand before we get in. You also mentioned that the the conferences are looking for pastors that have engaged in the work of the local church. But you also mentioned that in the North American division we have like 100, I think you said 100 people graduating as theology students among all the schools. And from what I heard, that the number of those theology majors that are graduating, or the number of theology majors that are graduating, is just very low. Like
Slow.
what I'm hearing, Pastor Cortes, and by the way, if you're coming into this program, we're talking about the next generation pastors. What are we looking for? What's happening in our field, and what are some of the skill sets that we need? So my question to you, Pastor Cortes, is: Are there some other reasons why people are not going into theology at school? Is the pastoral ministry a turnoff now? At one time, it's like, yes, let's get into it. Everybody wants to be a pastor, but now has it changed? What's happening?
Yeah. Uh, Listen, before I even get there, let me say this, because I don't think I finished my answer in the
Okay.
of the previous question, and then I'm going to get into that. Um, the reason why we worked on this next gen pastor initiative is because we want to pray, and I want to ask our viewers right now to keep this in mind, because we're praying for 2,500 children, youth, and young adults who will accept the call to God to pass from God to pastoral ministry within the next 10 years. Okay, we're wanting to identify children, youth, and young adults who have accepted God's call and who have those special gifts for pastoral ministry, and we want to facilitate those decisions. So that's part of the idea for the next pastor initiative. We want to facilitate those decisions. In other words, when a little kid comes to you and says, "I want to be a pastor," you don't want to do what someone did to me. You know, this was actually my favorite preacher. Okay, after my dad, he was my favorite preacher. I'm not going to mention any names because I know that the Adventist Church, even though it is very big, we have great communication, especially now that we are in this pandemic, post-pandemic time, and everything is virtual. I'm not going to say any names, but this guy worked in the GC.
All right.
Okay, he worked in the GC, man, and he was one of my favorite preachers. Okay, uh, and I remember he did evangelistic meetings close to my home in New Jersey, and I asked my dad, "Dad, take me because I want to hear him." So I went, I heard the sermon. After the sermon, we went backstage, and I waited because there was a long line of people trying to talk to this famous
Yeah.
evangelist. Uh, Waited to the end. I shook his hand at the very end and I said, "Pastor," I'm not going to mention his name, "I want to be a pastor too, one day like you." And he looked at me, bro, I was 15. He
Yes.
looked at me and he said, "You are too short to be a pastor." And I waited, Roger. I waited for the punchline. I said, "This guy is doing that's a joke. He's just trying to," and then he's going to say something nice now, and he just let go of my hand and he walked away. And I looked at my dad, and my dad looked at me, and I went like this, like, what in the world did this guy just do to me?
Right.
So We want people who create that beautiful atmosphere, facilitate the call, okay, for those who want to be pastors. You know what's the funny thing about that story? That he ended up being my church member. When I was a pastor in Silver Spring, Maryland. Can you believe
Oh,
that? You know,
you
so
give me too much
God
details. Too many details.
God has a sense of humor, all right? So, and then, we want to create that atmosphere for ministers. And we realize that the atmosphere is not good right now. And Dion, this goes to your question right now. Uh, you see, one of the things that we did as part of this Next Gen Pastor initiative, we authorized 2 studies. One of the studies is with pastors who have left ministry. So we want to know the reasons why pastors are leaving ministry, because
Okay.
if you want to fill up the bucket with pastors, you want to fill up the stack, you want more pastors, you need to make sure that our pastors are not leaving, and we have pastors, young, up and coming, super talented, who are leaving. Okay, so we're in the midst of that study right now. The early results demonstrate that some of the reasons why pastors leave, for example, um, they have a hard time with moving too quick. Like,
Mm.
Okay.
you go and put a pastor in a church, and then after 4 years, you try to move the pastor, and his wife has a job, okay, and the wife doesn't, she doesn't want to change her job because her job is good. And in the past, ladies, they just did what their husbands needed them to do, but that has changed. Okay. For example, right now, my wife is a pastor here as well. So I need to consider, if I ever want to move, I need to consider my wife as well. Does that make sense? So
Hmm.
that's one of the things. Uh, some other things, mistreatment that takes place in the local church. Um, Sometimes younger pastors, they don't feel that they have their back, that their administration has their back. Okay. um, there have been things said, such as, when you promote, um, you end up promoting people who are not qualified. So these younger pastors are seeing themselves, and having to uh, obey or follow some people who don't seem to have it together. So those are some of the types of things that pastors are saying, reasons why they leave ministry. Some others say stress. So we're dealing with the pastors, and that study is not finished yet. But we did one with younger generations. We did one with teenagers. Okay, and it was very interesting. Let me share a few things here with you. Um, you know, the majority of teenagers, they have a negative impression of ministry.
Mm.
Okay, a negative impression of ministry. Some of them have a good impression of ministry, and there are some who are neutral in the study that we did. But something that is clear is that a lot of the teenagers don't know what pastors do.
Okay.
Okay, uh, for example, there was one kid who said, "My dad takes me to school, then he comes back home, then he picks me up from school, and he works in his computer." Okay, that was what he said when, what about the work of a pastor. Some others say that pastors preach, pastors teach, pastors pray, pastors help the community. So some people said that, but a lot of our teenagers don't have an idea of what pastors do. Okay,
Wow.
and when we asked the question, so where do you get your information, your negative feedback from about pastoring from? In many cases, it does not come from pastors. So they are not getting the bad vibe about ministry from us. They are getting it at home. They are getting it from church members and the way they talk. So those are some of the things that we need to make sure that we work on, creating that atmosphere
I like
that
that.
ministry is not bad talked or given a bad rap, a bad reputation around lunch tables, and when we talk in front of kids, because that could be one of the reasons why kids don't are not looking at ministry as something that is favorable. Okay.
Right. Right. Yes. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm noticing in the comments. I want to welcome Bishop Donald Oliver. He's one of our live streamers. We appreciate his presence. Anything that we do here at Pastors Roundtable, he is a 100% true supporter. He is sharing some things as a pastor himself. What about pairing younger ministers with older ministers? But some of those assignments come from a different level than where you are, Pastor Cortez. What are some of the things at your level that can be done to engage younger people to think about ministry?
Okay. Uh, we we talked about some of these things. Okay. And there are things at the different levels of the church can do. For example, our level, North American division level, there are a few things that we can do. Number one, we need to create awareness, and that's part of the reasons for the Next Gen Pastor Initiative is to create awareness. And number two, we're working on these studies to see the reasons why pastors are leaving and the reasons why younger generations are not considering ministry. We're working on some of those things. We're working with our counterparts in our unions and conferences. And anywhere that we go, we're trying to sound the alarm that we're going to be needing more pastors in North America. So that's part of what we're doing with that. Another thing that we did for years, we had a situation, and I want to be very honest, very clear, very candid here. We had a situation that um, pastors, uh, let's say that you graduated as a theology student from college, conference wouldn't pick you up right after college. They will let you go to seminary, incur in more debt, and of course, this was not intentional, but the conference was trying to wash their finances. So you would go to seminary, incur in more debt, and then you would come back from seminary with your college debt, your seminary debt, and take a church. And the conference will call you right after seminary. And of course, conferences did receive some type of financial help to hire pastors for the first time. Uh, that financial help was meant to be used to sponsor pastors to the seminary, students to the seminary. But most conferences would take that help and use the help to pay the pastor during the first year, but not to help the pastor through the seminary. So something that we did in the ministerial association, we helped to create policy that would give those funds that were meant to be used for sponsorship. If a conference didn't sponsor you and they picked you up right after you finished seminary, uh, the new policy now says that they must give the seminarian coming back who was not a sponsor, they must give those funds to the seminarian so they're able to pay some of their debts and are able
Mm,
to do some of these things. So that's a way of making it easier for the next gen pastor to be
Wow.
able to go into the district without having to have even more debts. Am I making myself clear? Something
Wow.
else
mm,
that
That's
we have
good.
been doing, we have the seven core qualities, and you can look those up in our nadministerial.org. I'm sorry, nadministerial.com. You can look at the seven core qualities. We talk to pastors, we talk to elders, we talk to conference presidents, we talk to ministerial directors, and we did a study on the things that are very important for a pastor to succeed. Okay. And so we got the seven core qualities, seven competencies that pastors must have in order to be good pastors. And we have been working with all of our universities, with our seminary, to make sure that the training that is given there, that it is a training that goes with what a pastor needs to do. Because for years, some of our pastors felt that they were learning a lot of theology, but they were not learning practical theology. And I want to say this: theology that is not practical is useless. Are you getting
mm,
me? Uh,
mm.
so you need to be able to apply. You need to be able to apply what you learn in the local setting. So that's some of the things that we're doing. And now we're also working with the youth department, uh, with the education department of our church. We want to make sure that youth ministries and our education, our schools, that they know that it is time to work to call younger generations to ministry. And I want to say this. I want to give you here a few ideas of things that can be done. For example, uh, we want to make sure we want to make sure that we begin to talk about ministry from the time the kids are little.
Hmm.
You don't want to wait to high school or till college to start talking to young people about the needs for ministry. So in our conversations, I remember the principal for Tacoma Academy. She said to us in that conversation, her name is Carla. She said, "Pastor, you need to begin to talk to kids at the early ages. You know, when they are in elementary school, when they are in second and third grade. Those are the times when the pastor shows up to have a devotional at school, and the kids run to their pastor, and they feel that the pastor is a hero. Those are the times when we need to start talking to kids about ministry. You know, those times when kids are saying, I want to be a policeman or a policewoman. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a carpenter. You know,
Mm.
those are the times when we need to start talking to them and begin to mention ministry at that time. Um, Something else that we can do, and that is something that I do, and that is something I would like to appeal to my colleagues to do on a regular basis. Anytime that I go anywhere to preach, I always make an appeal. And the appeal contains is twofold. People who would like to be baptized. You know, you always want to make sure that you help bring people into the kingdom. And number two, do we have any young person here today who would love to be a pastor at some point, or who is giving thought to the possibility of being a pastor? So, you know, most of us who are in ministry today is because someone called us in the past. Okay, so I think that's very, very important. So if you're at the union level, if you're at the conference level, if you're a local church pastor, we want to make sure that you're talking about it, that you're mentioning the need, that you're making those appeals, that you show up at camporees. Hey, Roger, you know, I have been a youth guy most of my life, or now in ministerial. Why in the world did I need to go to Oshkosh? Why? You know why? Because we need younger generations.
Right.
Okay? So we want to love on them. We want to use their currency. What is their currency? What is the currency of pathfinders at a camporee? Pins. You know, they want pins. At the camporee, they want pins. So we had pins. We had the best looking pins in the entire camporee, you know, and no need to apologize to anybody. They were the best pins, all right? And we had thousands of kids, okay? I think we had around 11,000 kids that went through our booth looking for our pins. And every time that we gave someone a pin, we talked about the possibilities of considering the call to ministry. So we need to use their currency. We need to be present with them. We need to work in our schools. We also need to work with our young people who don't go to Adventist school through our pathfinders and adventurers, okay, and our local churches. But the most important thing is a local church pastor. The local church pastor that pastors well has the biggest influence on a kid who wants to who will want to be a minister at some point. Right, that was a long answer.
But it was a comprehensive answer. It was a great
It was
answer.
comprehensive. And Raj, I was going to say, I like the part where Pastor Cortez said he makes an appeal. There's really two appeals: accept Jesus, and anybody who wants to join this
Your
thing, come
facts.
on in. You know? And I think that's where it's at. You know, if the world can make appeals to our children to be a part of their organization, why can't we as pastors acknowledge those who feel the call of God? I love it. I love it. I love it.
And you know something else for pastors, have the kids shadow you for a day. You know, and take time and hang out with your kids. You know, and so that way they know what a pastor do. And that day that they're going to shadow you, make it fun. You know, don't make that day the boring pastoral day, but make that day the fun day. And the last thing I want to say that you, Roger, can do, Dion, you can do, and each one of the people watching us today can do. Mentor one young person. Mentor one young person. There is nothing that goes beyond the power of mentoring one young person. I'm mentoring. I'm mentoring several young people. I'm doing it, including one of my kids who said that he wants to be a pastor. That's my youngest boy. He says he wants to be a pastor. And so I encourage him. I have never told him, but he's too short to be a pastor. I have never, you know, I always tell him that he's gonna make a better pastor than Papa and a better pastor than Grandpa, because my dad is also a great pastor. So I say, you're gonna make better. I'm not sure that he can be better than Mom, because Mom is awesome. She's as good as they get, but at least better than Papa and better than Grandpa. So I keep telling him. So we need to do that more often with our young people. Be positive.
In this shadowing, maybe we should take them to a board meeting, huh? So
Hey,
hey, the board would be a
there
lot
are some
sweeter.
board meetings. There are some board meetings that can be fun. And if
That's
you
right.
ever take them to a board meeting, let them talk to the board and say, these are the things that we wish you could do for
Right.
kids. Don't keep them there for the fight, but at least let them talk to the board for a little bit and tell them what is it that would be good for the kids.
Let,
So I've noticed over the in these last couple of years we're talking about the next gen pastor, and
yeah.
I think maybe we have jumped to the real young ones, but there are some younger pastors than I am, that seems to have a different flavor of how they minister, a different flavor on how they fit into the organization that we call the church, the conference per se, the business side of the church. What are some of the things you have been noticing that kind of allow you to raise your eyebrow or scratch your head to say, is this what we are dealing with, or is that just something we as older pastors need to kind of get a grip on, and just be ready to maybe even transition to that kind of thinking? Um, are there some things out there that you're seeing that our younger pastors are doing that that may be the direction we need to go?
Um, I think that we need all of the above in order to reach all. Okay. Uh, because most of us, Roger and Dion, for years, we've looked the same, we've talked the same. Uh, you know, you can tell where a pastor graduated by the way they talk. You know, when you got someone that talks to you with a deep voice and slowly and very, you can tell where that person came from. All right. Should I mention any universities or anything, or you guys got it? All right.
We got you. We got
So
you.
okay, so I think we need to stop trying to have cookie cut pastors. Okay, so I see some pastors that like to dress down. Okay,
Mm,
and they preach dress down and all of that. I think that's needed. Okay. I think there is a place for a suit and tie, but I also think there is a place for sneakers and jeans and a t-shirt. Okay. Depending of the people that you're trying to reach, depending of where you are, I think there is a place for that. I see in the way of preaching, and I believe that what really matters is not is connecting. Okay, so whatever you need to do to connect, you connect. I see pastors who are like in the time when I grew up, we were taught not to be vulnerable. Okay, the pastor is right.
Mhm.
The pastor does not admit mistakes too much because people look up to the pastor, and the moment that mold breaks, people all of a sudden stop looking up to the pastor. That's what I was
Mm,
taught years ago. I realized that being vulnerable is a good thing, okay,
mm,
because people are able to relate to you. On the other side, I want to say this: I see some of the colleagues who are way too vulnerable. Okay, so you don't have to be sharing every single thing that happens to you, because at times, it may hurt your ministry. So be vulnerable, but be careful with the things that you share, and be careful with the things that you put in places, and be careful where you put them. Uh, Also, let me say something here, Roger. And I have always been. Um, I consider myself one of the up and coming guys, one of the open minded guys, one of the guys who is accepting of diversity within our church and within ministry. Um, but let me say this: I've been to seminary on ministry opportunity days. Ministry opportunity days. That's the day when presidents and ministerial directors are there looking for pastors. Okay, and I see guys. with the hoodies and the pants down, and uh, you know, and I don't know, Roger, if that is conducive to getting a job when the conference presidents are there.
Mm.
You get me? Did I
Mhm.
say something wrong? You guys are looking at me seriously like this.
No, no,
Uh,
no. You're right.
Hey, you making a good point, so we don't want to trivialize it with laughter.
yeah. Uh,
Speak the truth.
Yeah.
so dress for success, guys. When those conference presidents and those guys are there, make sure that you represent yourself as good as possible. And you know that most of these guys, they do have an image that they're looking for. Okay,
Mhm.
once you get your church, once you get to the setting, once you get to your community, do you do what you have to do in order to contextualize. But once
Mm.
you're looking for a job, dress for the interview.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, appear pastoral. Okay, and what I'm saying, appear pastoral. I'm not trying to tell you you need to be cookie cut, but you know what the guys are looking for when they show up for an interview. Once you go to your context and you get to meet your community, you begin to do what you need to do in order to reach your community. Okay, but you already got that job as a minister. Am I making myself clear? So
Mhm.
you're able to do what you need to do once you're there. But before you get your job, make sure that you do your best to impress well those who are going to look for someone, because they want to look for someone who is presentable and whom they can enjoy hiring. So do that for me, please. I've seen it. We've talked about it. I'm a ministerial directors, and at times, this guy has a great talent. And look, and we realize that dress is not everything. I don't want to trivialize. I don't want to be patronizing, but I'm trying to be real here for those seminarians that are looking for a job. Uh, Dress for success during those times, and once you get to your district, you're able to contextualize and you're able to do what you want to do. But I want to say very clearly. I want to say very clearly, regardless of your preaching style, you
Hmm.
don't have to be the guy that stands behind the pulpit. You don't have to be the guy that reads from the manuscript. You don't need to preach expository every time like we were taught that we needed to do. Uh, what you need to do, you need to communicate the gospel. And you need
Amen.
to make those appeals. And you need to make sure that your church is growing. And you need to make sure that you're keeping those who are coming in. So do whatever you do in order to make sure that that happens. So I don't care. I don't care what you do, as long as you're doing the things in order to pastor your church. And one thing, for years, we were taught that we needed to pastor our churches. I think that today, if you're going to be a pastor, a next level pastor, a pastor of impact in North America, you need to be a pastor who considers himself or herself not only the pastor of your church, but the pastor of your city, the pastor of your community. So
Right.
you're not only the pastor of the four walls and those who are inside the four walls, you're the pastor of your community, you're the pastor of your neighborhood, you're the pastor of your city. And I think that those things can take you long ways. So agility, flexibility. It's okay to be different, but be careful. Be careful as you try to be different, uh,
Yeah.
to make sure that you don't hurt your ministry in the process.
Wow.
Got
I
you.
mean, that's a lot said. You're right. I mean, we have to dress for success, right? And in any job interview, you want to make sure that you uh, just present well with your image, of course, because that makes a tremendous difference. I like what you said. Very good. Now, just another question here. Again, as we talk about these next generation pastors, we put it in the context of the pandemic. So, for you, during the pandemic, have your perspective on leadership kind of evolved in some ways? As because you're a leader, you're ministerial in the ministerial department, and but again, the pandemic was so new, and of course, you're talking about flexibility, and I know that that's very important for pastors, next generation pastors now to be very flexible. But your view on leadership, has it evolved based on the pandemic? Has the pandemic impacted your view on leadership?
Um, yeah, it has, and I probably need to go back to what I said before. Leadership that is not flexible, leadership that is not agile, cannot last. and I am fearful. Well, it can last, but if it lasts, it is not relevant.
Right.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I have acquired over the years, not only now through the pandemic, but over the years, I have acquired uh, a lot of respect, a lot of respect for leaders who are able to surround themselves with people who are really good at what they do. Okay. I've seen different types of leaders. I've been in this work now for 30 years, guys. Next year is going to be 30 years. I began
Wow.
1992. Next year is going to be 30 years. So I've been around for 29 years. And I've seen two types of leaders in the church. I've seen the leaders who are there to maintain themselves there, and they do that at any cost. And usually, this type of leader will surround himself with, and I say himself because we haven't had a lot of female examples in our church, but will surround himself with people who are not as good, people who are not as bright,
Mm.
people who cannot overshadow them. And by doing that, ministry all around them becomes difficult, and it becomes halfway, and ministry at times may be irrelevant. And God uses anybody, but God could use people a little bit more if they were willing to surround themselves with people who are really good. And I have seen other leaders who are more concerned for the growth of the kingdom than they are for themselves.
Mm.
Mm.
And those are the leaders that end up making an impact. And they may not be the leaders that get the positions all the time, but the other ones that make the impact. Am I making myself clear?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of respect for leaders who are able to surround themselves with the best, and are able to give an opportunity to people to voice their opinions, because there is wisdom. The Bible says that. It says it in the Bible. There is wisdom in the counsel of many. So these are some of the things that I have acquired a different level of respect during the pandemic. Uh, because during the pandemic we have needed of the unconventional, unorthodox pastors and leaders to help us through, and those who have been willing to surround themselves with those type of guys, they have been able to thrive, and they have been able to succeed during this time. So yeah, agility, flexibility, ability to surround yourself with the best. When you surround yourself with the best, and if I have any leaders who are watching right now or listening to us, let me say one thing. When you surround yourself with the best, you look great. You end up looking great. Uh, and the people that you surrounded yourself with, they are not there to take your job. They are there to help you. They are there. Nobody, when you're giving people opportunities, people don't want to take the job of the person that gave him an opportunity. They want to help that person to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So it blesses everybody. It blesses those that you're surrounding yourself with, and it blesses you the most when you have great people around you. So uh, a lot of respect and a lot
That's
of
good.
love and a lot of kudos to those leaders that are able to do that prior to the pandemic, through the pandemic, and post pandemic. A lot of respect for those type of leaders.
All right.
Wow.
We
Wow.
we
Listen,
see some comments
we
coming in the
keep
chat. Go ahead, Raj.
yeah, good comments there. You talked a little bit about the next gen initiative. You kind of shared some of the things that you're doing. I think the awareness was part of that, things like that. Could you give us a little more structure as to? I'm a member sitting in the pew, and this is the first time I'm hearing about this. What exactly is the Next Gen initiative that's being taunted by the North American Division?
The Next Gen initiative is praying for 2,500 new pastors in the next 10 years. It's helping to identify young people who appear to have the gift for ministry, or who have been called by God. So if you're a church member sitting on the pew, if you're a parent, these are the times to start scouting and looking for those young people. Okay, you can do a lot. Parents, uh, church leaders, and local church pastors, you have the most influence on those kids. School teachers have a lot of influence on those kids.
Mm.
Pathfinder leaders, adventure leaders have a lot of influence on those kids. So scout for those kids that seem to have gift. Look at the young people who seem to have the call. and and begin to facilitate for them. How do you facilitate? By creating that atmosphere, by loving your pastor right now. So that way they see that pastors are people who lead and who are well treated, not people who are mistreated all the time. You facilitate that by loving those kids in their in what they are doing, by encouraging them. You facilitate by helping them monetarily once it's time to go to college. We have lots of people, young people out there with tremendous gifts, and the need to for funds to be able to go to college. And Roger, these are conversations that we're having division wide right now. A lot of our funding goes to the seminary for people who have already made that decision, who are already preparing themselves to be the pastor. At times we wonder, and it has been expressed to us by ministerial directors and pastors, if we need to put up more funding at the beginning of the journey rather than at the end of the journey to facilitate people coming in. What can you do? Help to create that atmosphere. Don't talk bad about ministry. Highlight ministry. Say good things about ministry. Encourage young people to go to ministry. When you see a young lady that can talk really good, and she gets up there and she recites a poem, or she preaches a sermon on Kids Day that everyone is electrified by, go up to that young lady and say, my goodness, you could be such an awesome pastor. We're going to be praying for you that God will continue to use you, and maybe one day you can be our pastor right here in this church. Those are the type of things. Those are the type of things that make a difference in kids' lives at this stage. Is that clear? So I think that's very important. And let me say one thing here, because in our team here in the Ministerial Association, we discussed this. We know that the atmosphere has been difficult with the conversations that around women in ministry during the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, here in my home, my wife and I had to make a point and say that is reality, and that reality needs to be discussed. And in our leadership in the North American division, we have done everything possible to make sure that we support women in ministry as much as we can. Okay, in this church. And it has been felt, it has been known, it has been heard. It is clear that the leadership of the North American division supports women in ministry. Okay, but with my wife, for example, we had to say we need to save some conversations from where the kids are not around.
Wow.
Okay, my kids, they saw my wife and I crying after the vote in San Antonio. Okay, and they asked, why are you guys crying? And we told them, because we feel that there is something that is happening that is not right, and we need to pray for our church. We told them. Okay, but we have decided that we're going to save some of the conversations that make ministry and or make things surrounding ministry look strange at this point, that we're going to save some of those conversations for later. Is that am I making sense here?
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to make sure that the atmosphere for ministry is right in our home. So, my dear father, my dear mother, dear church leader who is watching right now, some of those conversations about your pastor's sermon that take place during lunchtime, uh, perhaps those could be saved for another time when the kids are not present.
Yeah.
And perhaps, they need to be saved just to talk with your pastor rather than to talk about your pastor when the pastor is not present. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
So that's part of making the atmosphere right for young people who want to go into ministry.
Wow.
Excellent.
Wow. That's a lot said. You touched on a lot of things as far as the ministry is concerned, and just having a positive aspect or a positive perspective on the ministry so that people can join in. What can like conferences do to make the environment better for pastors and more attractive? Or we talked about what what members can do and what as I would say pastors can do, but what can the conference do? Is there something the conferences can do
By all
to
means,
make the environment better?
yeah. By all means, number one, create awareness. Okay, so I see ministerial directors and conference presidents. They need to be a camporees I know ministerial director is not a youth guy. Okay, but ministry of directors, you need to be at Camp Paris with your pathfinders. You need to be at your schools. We did at Oshkosh, we did an ice cream party. What if all
Yeah,
of our
somebody said
conference
that.
presidents and ministry of directors, they could do at every Camp Paris and every youth event, once in a while they could show up with ice cream, okay, and say, hey guys, we are here, we have ice cream for you, and we want to let you know that we need more pastors, okay? So can you imagine a conference president talking to kids and saying, I cannot do this alone, I'm getting old. And most of our conference presidents are getting old. And some are already there, some are getting old, some are there already. So, and I say this with all due respect, I'm getting old too, okay? But I cannot do this alone. We're getting older here. We need you. So you give them ice cream and talk with them. Okay, so number one, be present where the kids are and let them know about the need. And number two, stay in touch with children who have expressed interest in pastoral ministry. Right after Oshkosh, we collected a whole lot of names, and right away we wrote to each one of these kids that said, I'm interested in being a pastor. And we let the local conferences know that there are some of these kids are interested in being pastors. So stay in touch with those who have expressed a need to be a pastor. Number three, conferences can create a very intentional internship program. You
Okay.
see, I just talked about being engaged. If you're in college, if you're being engaged, so we could create. Let me start by saying this. For example, Rocky Mountain Conference, Campion Academy. Uh, right there, the pastor at the church has a next gen club, next gen pastor club. So uh, he's a pastor of the academy, and he created a next gen pastor club. And every week he meets with academy students who are interested in being pastors. Okay, he does that. Summer camp. You see, when college students they go to work for the summer, many of them decide to make less money, but they decide to go to summer camps to be counselors in summer camps. That is telling me that those students who decide to make less money and go to summer camp because they want to be counselors, that tells me that they have an interest in ministry and they have an interest in people. So we ought to be looking at our summer camps and saying, who are our best people here? And talking to them and say, hey, has it ever occurred to you that God may be calling you to be a pastor? You do such a great job. So create internship programs. Once the students are in universities, every summer, bring 4 or 5 kids from the local university. Go to Oakwood, go to Southern, go to Walla Walla, go to whatever university is close to you. Get 3 or 4 kids and put them in churches where you have great pastors that can model ministry for them really well, and let them get paid for doing that, and let them learn, let them bless the church, and let them get ready. That is a way of getting engaged. Once you do that, next thing is that the conference president is going to be coming back to you and saying, you did a great job. We want to hire you because you did a great job when you were here with our pastor at our church. So that would be something really, really good. And something else, conference leaders need to emphasize this and make appeals as they travel, as they meet, and as they preach about across conference territory. So these are some of the things that the conferences can do to make this happen. I just gave you a few practical ideas
Right.
right there.
And I was
It
going to
it
mention real quick, Raj. I was going to mention that we talked a lot about recruiting, but how about retaining? How can we keep those who are already pastors? How can we retain them? Because I think that when pastors leave a lot, then it encourages people to say, "Wait a minute, I need to take a second look at that position because people are leaving." How can we retain pastors?
Well, that has a lot to do with conference leadership, and it also has a lot to do with church members. Let me say one thing. We have a study that we did on health that says that our church members in North America, Adventists in North America, they last 10 years longer than the regular population of North America. Okay?
Right.
So if you're a church member, Adventist in North America, in the United States, in Canada, most likely you're going to live 10 years longer than everybody else, okay, who is not an Adventist. Okay? So the odds are in your favor. Okay? But guess what? If you are a pastor, this is really sad. Listen to what I'm about to say. If you're a pastor, you're going to live 10 years less, 10 years less than the population of North America. You know, so that means our members live 10 years more than the population. We live 10 years less. That means that we live, Roger and Dion, we got to take good care of ourselves. We live 20 years less than our members.
Wow.
Okay. So,
Oh,
and this is a study, okay, that we've done here in the Ministerial Association. We live 10 years less than our members. So what can we do? If you're a member, you need to love your pastor, and you need to
Yes.
support your pastor. And you need to realize that your pastor is a real person that has bones and flesh and a heart, and he's a sinner, okay, and needs your grace once in a while. Hopefully your pastor is loving you, but please, let's treat our pastors right, okay? Our pastors became pastors to minister, not to be mistreated, okay? But now, when it comes to the conference office, our conference presidents, and I know we have great conference presidents across our division, and our ministerial leaders, there is a lot that we can do to bless our pastors. Loving people, letting people know that they are loved, allowing people to feel valued, it goes long ways. Okay? So I think we need to love our pastors in a very special way. We need to love them in practical ways. And that means if your pastor is doing well, don't be moving your pastor every 3 or 4 years. That
Come
doesn't
on
help
now.
your pastor. That doesn't help the congregation. Imagine a family that gets a different father every 4 years. That family grows dysfunctional, okay? Uh, um, Try to match the gift of the pastor with the gifts of the church, you know? So, you know, I remember there were times when they put me in a church when a very, very veteran pastor had left, and now I was totally different, and I was coming in, and then I left, and then they put a guy that was totally different. So it's kind of like we had to be competing against each other to do. So place your pastors in the right place. With younger pastors, be conscious that they have spouses. Okay, younger pastors have spouses, and spouses also have a life, and they also have a profession. So try to make sure that when you put those pastors in place, that you put them in a place where both of them can thrive. And so that's very important. Remember that kids to go to school. PKs go to school. So don't make sure that if you're going to move the pastor, don't move him in the middle of a school year.
Come
Okay,
on now.
these are things that should be common sense, but at times we see them happening. Okay, mental health. Make sure that your pastor gets that sabbatical. And that's something that we have been doing from the North American division. We've been trying to make the sabbatical a policy across the division. So every time that a pastor pastors 7 years, he's able to take a month or 2 months off, and he's able to change focus a little bit and do something that builds him up or builds her up. Okay, so these are some of the things that we can do for our pastors. And how about helping that pastor get that degree? Okay,
yes,
I'm doing my doctorate in ministry right now. Okay, and I have pastors who are in the class with me who have to pay their entire way for the doctoral degree. They don't even get any help at all doing that. And I know that at times, conferences may be a little bit strapped for money, but who is going to benefit from the pastor being up to date and being educated? The conference is going to benefit, and the local church is going to benefit. So make sure that you bless your pastor like that. Little things like every time that there is a birthday, receiving a gift card for, even if it is just $25, with a little note saying, my pastor, I love you. This is from the conference president. Okay, my pastor, I love you. I want you to know that you're so special to us. Take this $25, and go buy something, go out to eat, and add it at least for the tip, but do something with it. But we just want you to know that we love you. Treat the pastors as if they're adults. Don't treat them like little kids. Don't be patronizing. Those types of things help the pastors to stay. Okay, I've had great presidents that have blessed me. I have other presidents that haven't been that great, and they have not blessed me. To this day, they sit, in the hall of shame of my head, when I look back, it's dark. But there are some other presidents that when I look at them, I say, wow, this guy really helped me to grow. Okay, so, I think loving and treating pastors as the professionals that they are, it's okay to hold them accountable. We want to be held accountable by our leadership, but be fair. Okay, I think those things can help pastors to stay. Okay, so just a few ideas here. I'm sure that the chat is blowing up with a whole lot of more ideas, but I just giving you a few off the top of my head right here.
You were spot on. There were times when what you said came out your mouth, it came up in the chat. What came up in the chat, you said. So obviously, you are in. I talked this morning when I shared this morning at a church. We talked about vibes, and the Holy Spirit moves through, and the grace of God is there. So you're vibing spot on, as one of our viewers, Stephanie, just shared. You are spot on. Well, Doc Cortes, we have to say that we have filled up an hour and a half with conversation and meaningful conversation. Thank you so
that's
much.
That's not hard for the three of us, okay?
We want to just say thank you so much for coming on and sharing this spotlight on the next gen pastor. And I hope that our members who have listened, who have been a part of this, and who will listen, will be able to do something to help move the agenda forward. We are looking for 2,500 pastors. My Lord, That's a lot of pastors. But you know what that tells me? That tells me there's a lot of people out there who need pastoring. And that is a good thing in this profession. So we praise God for that. Doc Henry, what's happening next week?
Well, listen, again, thank you, Pastor Cortes, for your wisdom. You are always, listen, you always have a seat at the table. I just want to say that right now. You always have a seat at the table. Next week.
Thank you for the invitation, man. I love being here with you. And there is a guy here asking if I'm running for president. I love what I do. Okay, so, hey.
Hey, you should have been on the show last
Bishop
week.
is meddling now. Bishop is meddling.
But listen, next week we are going to be. Can I say it, Raj? We're going to be together.
Yeah,
all of us will be together on Pastor's Roundtable. We will be at the Southeastern Conference. We'll be doing a show at 4:00, and so next week is going to be exciting. I just want to let our viewers know, please put it in your calendar. Pastors Roundtable at Southeastern Conference Camp Meeting. It's going to be a blessing.
One of the greatest features about that is we finally, all three of us are going to be in the same building. So the show will actually be live for us. You will be able to join in virtually, but we're excited about the opportunity that Southeastern has asked Pastors Roundtable to be a part of their virtual camp meeting presentation on next week. And we will be talking about the Southern Union Southeastern Conference's initiative on member retention. And so, Pastor Cortes, you will be part of sharing some information on that with us next week. You won't be there with us, but you'll be sharing with us next week. But I am so excited about the opportunity to share with that part of our viewership next week as we bring the Pastors Roundtable there to the Southeastern Conference camp meeting.
All right. Well, listen, again, Roger, you going to take us out?
I will be happy to do that. Thank you again, Pastor Cortes, for being with us. We want you to know you're doing a great job. You started off the top talking about being a good father, good husband, and I want you to know you're doing everything that I look up to you as a leader in this church. And I want to say thank you for not only just being a great leader, but being a great friend. And we here at the Pastors Roundtable, we are so excited that you, our viewers, have joined us again this week, where we try to make ministry relevant,
resourced, and real.
And real.
God bless.